Well, I'll tell you, with all the technology that's out there, all the AI that can answer any question or whatever, be it completely correct or not correct, you have to check that everything. You can get a lot of data. And I mean, that's one thing our consumers have right now. They have access to data, but that data does not connect like you connect with another human being.
So today we have Scott Byerly. He's a licensed real estate broker with RE/MAX, serving the Charlotte and Harrisburg areas here in North Carolina. He's a former American Red Cross professional. He leverages his deep local market knowledge and his relationship-first approach to guide buyers and sellers through residential transactions across all price points. Scott, thank you so much for being here, and make yourself at home.
Hey, Dee, thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction, and it's truly an honor to be here with you today. And let's talk about some conversations and what's going on with our market.
That's awesome. So, all right, you were in the Red Cross. How did you get from Red Cross to real estate?
So, yeah, I was with Red Cross. I joined them like in 1991, worked in distribution, worked my way up into hospital services, and working one-on-one with our local hospitals, about 300 hospital contracts across North and South Carolina. So around 2005, I had a friend of mine that was doing real estate, and he said, I think you'd be pretty good at this. Why don't you take the course and everything? I was like, sure, why not? So I took it. He was kind of a little upset with me because I did take the state test and passed it the very first time. And he was like, it took me 4 times to do it. But back then also I got great advice from my teacher and jumped right into the broker class and got my broker's license before legislation changed as far as how you became a broker. So I did that, and with Red Cross, it's all about, serving the community and everything. Mine was more, I didn't go out with like disasters or anything like that. Mine was more one-on-one with blood banks in our area. So like I said, we had distribution centers in North and South Carolina, 300 hospital contracts, and they all would call me to order products. So that was what my responsibility was at the time.
So, with a background like that, how does your background change the way that you handle, say, high stress property transactions?
Really, it's, number one, with that position, I really knew exactly what I was doing. I've been there for a while. I was well trained in how to handle situations as it pertained to that. When it comes to real estate, I do the same thing. I invest in my education. I went to Wingate University, got a degree in sports medicine, got my master's in healthcare administration. And so I love to learn. It's just part of my DNA. So when I got my real estate license, I didn't stop there. So I went beyond and got a lot of designations and everything to increase my knowledge of what I'm doing, perfect our craft, invest in ourselves. But with Red Cross, I knew I was helping people. At the end of the day, even though I wasn't directly in front of them, I knew what I was doing was making a difference in someone's life somewhere. So with real estate, that's what translated from Red Cross to real estate. Now I'm one-on-one with people. Now I'm right there with them, helping them achieve whatever goals it is they have with their real estate needs, whether it's buying, selling, both, making some sort of transition or whatever the case may be. That's what translated the most for me, was knowing that I could still be in a profession where I have a direct impact on someone's life, and hopefully a positive manner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, and anytime that we deal with this, it is stressful for our buyers and sellers. And it doesn't matter what it is, because we're dealing with their most expensive purchase, the most money they're ever going to spend. And so when I look at this, I tell, especially coming from Red Cross, I tell people, I said, it is not life and death. That's one of the things. It doesn't have to be handled at this minute, and everything is figure outable.
Very true.
It doesn't, as long as we're all working to the same goal, we will all get there.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, and really part of our role, we're the professionals. We do this every day. Things don't impact us as much as they do our clients. So it's being aware of that and being aware of your clients, be aware of their emotions going through the moment, and understand it might be their very first time purchasing a home, or maybe they've purchased like 50 homes, they're well versed with everything. But that's just where you get to know your client and know where they're at in the whole process of buying and selling, and then be sensitive to that. And that's also learning what level of communication you need to have with that client. Some people are fine just, hey, let me know what's going on once a week, or I really need to know as soon as things happen what's going on.
That's one of the things that I did, a couple years back. I started with this: we talk as many times as you want, if it makes you comfortable. But I also talk to them about, okay, once a week, we go over what happens the previous week. So on sellers, like tonight is my night. Tuesday nights, I talk to them about 6 to 7 o'clock, depending on when everybody gets home. And if I have some folks that tell me, like I have one house that has 4 sellers, so I can talk to one set of sellers at 6 or 7 on Tuesday. The other ones, they're like, we really need to talk on Sunday. Not a problem, because I can make that work. But typically for me, I was like, sellers are on Tuesday. That way we can talk about what transpired over the weekend. And then buyers are on Wednesday. We can talk about, what did you find? How'd you see? What did you think of the things that we saw last week? What were you thinking about? What transpired with you? And then that way I'm not only touching them weekly, nobody's forgotten, but I'm also making sure that they know that no matter what, they can call me anytime. I was talking to these are brand new buyers. They're kind of the same age as my sons. And, he's like, well, I don't want to bother you. I'm like, you're not bothering me. I'm here for you. That's what
Right.
this is your biggest transaction. So we want to make sure that you're in the right area. And their families in Union County, and they're looking all the way up in like Iredell County and stuff like that. I'm like, your mama might want you a little bit closer because y'all are probably going to have babies here in the next few years. And he's like,
Yep.
yeah, I probably should think about that.
Well, and that's also where, keeping the main thing with the clients, because if that is like their main objective when you first meet and you sit down and you start talking about your goals, where you want to be and everything, and they mention that, and then in the course of things, they're like, go over in left field somewhere. It's like, okay, we got to rein you back in and say, these were your goals when we started. So let's get back on track here and get you back where you should be.
Well, I mean, how many times have you seen it where you're like, okay, I want a 4-bedroom ranch. I don't want to go to 2-story. I don't ever want to see anything that's full brick. I don't ever want to. And then the next thing they buy is this 2-story brick house in a completely different area. It's like, all right, we got to talk about what you really want all over again,
Yeah. And a lot of times, in all honesty, that initial conversation does morph into that as we go through the process, So it's just understanding that we're still going to achieve their goals. It's not going to be spot on with that initial conversation.
It's not always settled with one conversation. It's a continuing conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, I hear you are a rare duck. Are you an actual Charlotte native?
Absolutely. So while I did not technically grow up right in Charlotte, I was born in Charlotte in 1970. And then when I was 4 years old, we moved to Harrisburg, just outside the line.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, my dad was heavily involved with NASCAR in the 70s. And so we had to be right by the racetrack. So that's where we were, right off Moorhead Road, which runs right beside the racetrack. So that's where we were at. And that's where Mom still is today.
So you were actually born in Charlotte.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. So, I'm a Southern native. I moved to Hickory, so outside of Charlotte when I was 10,
Right.
but I was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. And then we
Okay.
moved up here. So I've spent more than 40 years in the Charlotte metro region. So, and I do consider my mom just moved from Hickory or Conover herself. So as a Charlotte native, what do you think has been the most dramatic shift in our housing market over the last couple of decades? And we might even get micro down to just the last few years.
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious, if we look at decades wise, everybody knows the 2008 meltdown, and the dynamics with that, the bank driven problems that were with that. Actually, when I very first started, I hate to admit, I was actually with a company that was kind of involved with some of this kind of targeting, picked up on that pretty quickly, and then I moved out of that. I was like, this is not the environment for me. I don't think long term you guys are going to be in a good position. But that was bank driven. That was poor decisions and really lax lending rules. The next one is obviously going to be the COVID time. When we had like so little inventory. As soon as we found out, okay, we are essential and we can actually sell homes and do all this because people still need housing. And then it went bonkers. I mean, you would see appreciations of 15, 20% across the Charlotte area. You would see ridiculous due diligence fees and waiving all kinds of appraisals, inspections. And now we're seeing, a ton of buyer remorse for doing stuff like that. So that was just an artificial economy at that point with what was going on with the lending being, next to zero cost to get money at, 3 and 2.75% and everything. So, you know, I think our biggest challenge from that point moving forward is to basically educate our buyers that was an artificial economy and that those rates are not realistic and in our lifetime we'll never see again, more than likely.
Well, I mean, I just had a little girl call me a couple weeks back, and she's starting to have a family. She's on
Hmm.
baby number two, and she was like, even though she's got plenty of space, she bought this house in her early 20s, 5 bedrooms, plenty of space. But she's like, I found a house that I really love. When do you think we're going to see 3% again? And I went, well, when you look at it, we had 3% in 1944 when they started paying attention to it, and then we got it again back in 2010. So 44 to 2010, that's about 70 years. So my guess would be about 2080, 2090. And she goes, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you have to look at the trends overall. It was free to borrow money.
Right.
We had lost coast to coast about 10 million new construction homes because you got in right before I did. I got in 2008. And so perfect timing.
Perfect timing, right?
2008 hit in Charlotte, we lost 300 builders. Now these
Yeah.
were the little mom and pop shop, but we lost 300 builders just here. So across the country, they said from 2008 to about 2018, we lost 1 million new construction homes being built every single year. So in 10 years, we lost 10 million homes. So when 2018, 2019, 2020, we started to feel that new
Hmm.
construction loss because you've seen it. We need about 25,000 listings just to deal with us native Charlotteans. And
Correct.
then we got 157 people moving into our area every single day because
Yeah.
it's still somewhat reasonable to live here. And we have 10 million homes that we're missing. Yeah, we had 2,000 homes in a month. People were just buying contracts. I don't care what condition the box is in. We just want the box.
That's right. That's right. It's so true. It's just a tough time and everything. But again, it's just educating these buyers on that and just, hey, look, on the average, you look at the last 40-year average, and we're at 6.3% or whatnot. We're lower than the average over the last 40 years. Like so, and I'm seeing it more now. I'm getting a lot more buyers coming through. They're realizing, things are stable, even with everything going on overseas, that the rates really have not moved that much. The bond index is staying pretty steady. So with that stability, they're having a little bit more confidence in going out and buying. So that's actually good to see.
That was the thing when, I know that you guys do it because I've been with Remax myself, that you look at, again, the bond index. You're listening to Lawrence Yoon from NAR. He's an economist with them, but we
Right.
also listen to our lenders locally, and they're watching the bond index, and they were predicting that by the end of the year, we would probably be sub 6%. Well,
Right.
6.4 is the average. So
Right.
anything below 6.4, we're in good shape.
True.
And they were like, we'll be probably sub 6%, and then the Middle East happened.
True. Yeah. And with all the data they had and everything moving forward, there was really no reason not to think we would not be able to get under 6%. I think the lowest we probably could have got to was 5.75.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is a huge opportunity for buyers, a huge opportunity for people to refinance who, got in at like seven, so there were so many things in that market that were really going to be moving in a great positive direction. And then, like you said, here comes the Middle East. Yeah,
Right, looking at all of the explosive growth, because we talked about the 157 people coming every single day, but
right.
looking at this growth in the surrounding areas like Harrisburg, what is hidden? What hidden pockets are currently offering the best long term value?
So, I work essentially about a 2 hour radius of Charlotte. So, I mean, I'll go where my clients need me to go. And I mean, that's my license says North Carolina and South Carolina. It doesn't say Charlotte and Fort Mill. So we'll go out and everything. And I am seeing development happen. You go down 24, 27 out towards Midland area and Locust, builders are breaking ground out there. KB Homes, that was prevalent back in, 2005, 6, 7, 8, they've come back into the area. So they're building down there. They're building out also in a small pocket in Indian Land. They've got a community out there. So those are areas that I look at because, as we know, our average price of homes in Charlotte is it's not attainable for a lot of people. So you're moving further out in order to be able to afford something. So then that's what's happening. And I think that the Mint Hill area is going to have some because there's some great properties out 218. Like I said, Midland, you get some down in Indian Land, although Lancaster County is trying to divert growth in that area because it's so overpopulated now. If they can get some development running down 5 over to 21 to have a corridor going over to Rock Hill, they would love to see that. And I've already sat in front of council on a meeting with that as we were trying to acquire some land for a builder. And unfortunately didn't work out. But they spoke, deep about we need to get growth in that area to divert some of this because our services just can't handle all the growth we've had in Indian Land.
Of those 157 people,
Yeah,
York and Lancaster County were seeing 46, 47% of that coming directly at them. So we have had huge growth in this area. I personally live in the Fort Mill area. So we've seen that. And of course, a lot of the places that were growing so fast, they don't have a way to deal with waste. And so
right.
they've put a moratorium on building. But some of the things that we've seen that are more affordable have been the Rock Hill, Edgemoor, Iron Station, Lancaster, Locust, Midland, Kannapolis. Those are all,
Right.
and Kannapolis is starting to get a lot more urban. It's starting to catch
Well,
up with Concord.
yeah, and having grown up in that area and, spending my Fridays cruising around Concord and all that in high school, that has grown so much in that Kannapolis downtown area. You got the baseball stadium there, you got walkability to stores, to little restaurants and things of that nature. So, Kannapolis is really doing a good job from a township as far as making it attractive for people to come to that area. So, I mean, I'm seeing people look in Kannapolis. I've been up there and I've had listings in Kannapolis and I'm getting ready to get a listing down in Richburg, down in South Carolina. So I mean, but that's the thing is getting out in those areas and going out to York actually too. I've got clients that moved from Jersey, first time home buyers, young, family, small budget, and we got a great house for them on a contract in York, in their budget. And they were like, this is amazing. I was like, well, this is what you got to do. Thank goodness you're hybrid, so you don't have to drive to Charlotte every single day. But, you know, we found something that works, but you have to go out. And those pockets like that, because we have no choice, we have to expand out. And that's what's happening. And you're seeing it. I tell you, I lived in Steel Creek for 17 years. And I go through there now, D, and every spick of land is being uprooted and something is going on there on every corner. We ride down Shopton Road. It's unbelievable. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. I'm glad I'm not here anymore. The traffic's getting out of control.
Well, I
So,
tell people all the time, Charlotte's like a pair of lungs. I've been here since 1984.
okay.
So Charlotte's like a pair of lungs, and I've watched when gas prices go up, people move in. When gas prices go down, people move out.
Right.
But again, with COVID, people are now hybrids. They don't have to work 5 days a week in the city. They can
Right.
work from home. So we've now relaxed that to where people can go out a little bit further. So I just, the little couple I was talking about, we're getting ready to go look at new construction in Red Cross. And people are like, where's Red Cross? I'm like, it's the same thing like Locust. It's not as far as you think. People
That's
are
right.
also starting to look at Albemarle because you start to get back on the water with Lake Tillery,
That's right.
And those are places that people have never really thought about until we start hitting that hybrid, working transitions. We're
That's
starting
true.
to see the things like that where you can live in Clover or Kings Mountain and you still are considered the Charlotte metro region because you're still in the 16 counties that make us up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is a game changer with people being able to work from home more so. Because then you get to pick, like, okay, I really love where I live, being here and not, well, I need to be here because I got to go to work like 5 days a week, and I don't want an hour commute.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's funny. I got married and moved to the Raleigh area and lived there for we moved in 2004. So 6-7 years we were right in there. And my husband's commute, because I was a stay-at-home mom, was 38 miles. It was 45 minutes. We moved to Charlotte and we're like, woo, it's only 22 miles. Still 45 minutes.
Still 45 minutes. That's right.
More traffic. So
Yeah.
navigating price points and selling properties ranging from, like we've talked about, entry level to our luxury homes, you have to be adaptable. You talked about being in a two-hour radius around Charlotte.
Right.
What is the universal truth that applies to buyers across the board, every single price point?
Everybody has a pain point. Everybody does. And our job is to find what that pain point is. It's, do you need to relocate or move, for your family, for work, or, anything that could be there. It's finding out what that is, pain point, and also equates to motivation, as far as what that goes. And that's consistent no matter what your price point is.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with luxury properties versus a starter home, how do your negotiation strategies shift, for those different clients?
I think the biggest difference in that is, like, a lot of the luxury clients I've worked with, are cash deals. They have the cash to be able to buy these homes, which, is like, it's amazing. It takes out a lot of the financing, a lot of the negotiations as far as any contingencies or anything with that. When you get to your entry level buyers, you've got to be more aware of, budget sensitivity. What our negotiations is, what does it look like, explaining to them, hey, instead of asking for $10,000 off on a price, which might save you $60 a month, why don't we do a 2-1 buy down with a lender and save you $400 a month that first year, and then $200 a month the next year. And then, by that time, the rates may have changed to the point where you can refinance. And understanding, how that works and benefits them, where most people just think, I want to get a price reduction, where that's not necessarily the best strategy. With a luxury, you got the opportunity to negotiate things in, if it's a nice property on the lake, hey, okay, here's your full price offer, but we want the boat, the jet skis, the kayaks, the outdoor furniture, things like that you can put in the negotiations. And a lot of times, you win that and everything. So it's just getting it out there and understanding, what your luxury client is compared to your entry level client is, and just being able to navigate both of those at the point where you're at with the person you're working with.
Well, you talked about motivation, and you talk about the differences. With a first-time home buyer, we talk about they've saved up their down payment, and my son was one. Him and his girl decided that they were going to buy their first home together, and they had saved up a really good amount. And they're like, I'm going to throw all of it towards the mortgage. And I'm like, okay, well, your mortgage is going to come down $7 for every $1,000 you put in. Woohoo! I said, yeah. But if you save a good chunk of that and you pay an extra payment on that mortgage, you actually can shorten your mortgage where you're actually not paying more interest in the long
Right.
haul. So
Yeah.
you might want to save that. And when they looked at it, they were like, oh, wow, what a complete difference that makes. With my luxury clients, it's time. How can I save them time? They now have made the money, they have the cash, but
Right.
how do I save them the one resource they don't get back, which is
That's
the
time.
time?
Absolutely.
So that's what we see. I see a lot of difference on our side.
Right.
With real estate, we've noticed and have focused on real estate is very relationship first. We're always relationship first. How is that, and why is relationship first still the most powerful tool for us to be able to close deals and meet people?
Well, I'll tell you, with all the technology that's out there, all the AI that can answer any question or whatever, be it completely correct or not correct, you have to check that everything. You can get a lot of data. And I mean, that's one thing our consumers have right now. They have access to data. But that data does not connect like you connect with another human being. That's something that I don't care what AI does or anything, you're never going to be able to get away from that one-on-one person that can connect to you on a level and a personal level and build an actual relationship with, and that's the person that, hey, I trust this person. They've got my back. They're going to tell me all the information I need to know, probably more information than I need to know, but they're going to make sure that I have everything possible to make the best decision for me and my family and ultimately protect our best interest. So you look at the technology, none of that's doing that, but it'll give you information all day long.
I mean, how many times have you said, hey, and I can't say her name because she's listening, hey, Noodle, and they're like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Or you get something completely different. My husband talks to Noodle and it speaks back to him in Italian every single time. So, as much information as we have, it's how do you break it down? How do you make it, like I used to sit down doing homework with the boy and I would teach it one way. Well, if they didn't get it that way, we taught it a different way. And if that didn't work, we taught it a third way or a fourth way. And Noodle doesn't do that.
No, that's the thing, is you can have all the data in front of you and still not know really what that means for you as a consumer. You have one of us, a realtor, representing you and telling you and saying, okay, so what this means for you is this. And then they get it, so it's just like that example you were using with teaching math. And I had to do the same thing with my daughter. She comes home with this block system thing. And I'm like, I don't know what this is or why they're teaching you this, but this is not what I know. So, but I talked to her teacher about that too, and this was a good point. And she said, "Look, teach her the way that you know, because there's always more than one way to solve the problem." And that was one of the biggest things. My wife calls me the biggest nerd, because I'll talk about when I was taking algebra trig in high school, and I'd have a page that was one problem. It was a whole page, and I was like, that was just amazing. It was such a great thing, but it was taking whatever you got and then you find a solution. So she thinks I'm crazy, but that's okay.
No, because it takes all kinds. That's one of the things is that, I tell my clients, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but that's okay. I'm champagne. So some people don't, and as you've seen, I laugh and I try to bring joy in everything that I do. But some people, they need the straightforward nitty gritty. I need you to be serious about all of this. Yes, right. There's joy in everything, but I need you to break this down. And I may not be that person's best advocate that they need. And that's okay, because everybody's going to do it differently.
Yeah, that is true, because I've had several of my clients that were engineers, and, they're a breed of their own. They really are. So I recognize that quickly. I'm able to adapt my style to match what they are. And we get through the process and have a great transaction together, but I think that's one of the best things for me is whenever I meet a client is understanding where they're at, what they need as far as communication and personality wise, Are we good kidding around and everything, or is it, we need to be serious about everything? So I'll pick up on that pretty quickly, and then I just adapt to who's in front of me.
Yeah, we mirror our clients to try and make
Absolutely.
sure that they're as comfortable as absolutely possible.
That's right.
And that's
Yeah.
what clients, that's what counts, is that their comfort is paramount in this industry. Because
Absolutely.
what's the biggest communication breakdown that consistently causes real estate deals to fall apart?
The lack of communication. I mean, it's so prevalent now, and it seems to be getting worse and worse, is getting people to communicate at an effective level is like pulling teeth these days. And I don't understand why that is, or why it's transitioning, if it has something to do with going through the COVID phase and people being stuck behind screens and and stuff like that. But I mean, it's just the level of communication needed to make sure we have a smooth transaction and get through the process so everybody's happy is a high level of communication. And our clients, as us being professionals, should expect nothing less than that. So when a deal falls through, it's typically because somebody didn't communicate with somebody about what's going on and just left it, and then it just festered up like a bomb and blew up the deal.
Yeah. And that's the thing, every time I meet with a client, I always ask them, do you text? How do you prefer to communicate? How would you like to hear from me? And then
Absolutely.
that way I know, because my kids, they don't answer the phone. It doesn't matter if you call them or not. The ringer's off. They're never going to see it. They prefer texting. And that's okay. If that's what you prefer, that's how we'll talk. But when it's something that we have to communicate to help you understand, we are going to talk. Text won't work.
There's too much lost in context. Yeah, too much lost.
What's the average sales price hovering around $500,000 what in our area?
Right.
What's the biggest misconception that buyers have about affordability in today's market?
Well, a lot of the buyers they listen to too much news and social media. Number one, that's the biggest problem, But it's also not understanding that there are programs out there to help, that they don't have to come up with 20% down, that you can have programs where you can pay 3.5% down, or you can pay nothing down and have a down payment assistance program come in and help you with that. And there are so many programs in both North and South Carolina that help buyers with this, and just the general public just doesn't know about it. But they're out there, and like Canopy MLS actually has another icon on there that tells us, here's the down payment assistance programs that this property qualifies for. You can click on that, and it gives you a list of all the programs that can help a buyer buy this property. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I see is, oh God, we got to save up 20%. Oh, well, I'll never get to that. Well, you don't really need that. That's a misconception.
Well, even with, just like we said before, even with a huge down payment, it might be better to hold on to some of that and be able to pay your mortgage and make your mortgage shorter. Because, I tell clients, I said, there's nothing scary about getting a mortgage. And everybody's freaked out because we don't teach finances. We don't teach financial literacy.
Nope.
And it's one of the hardest things. And that's why I have this podcast, is I want to reach everybody and talk to them and say, look, guys, you don't get taught finances in school. And so finances are this big, scary thing that looms out there. So you're walking into a bank and you're like, I want to rent your money. That's all it is. You want to rent their money, and you need to get the best deal you can for renting the money. And so the bank is looking at making as much money on you as absolutely possible. If you look at page 3 of a closing disclosure, it's nauseating, because you think you're buying a house for $400,000, and then you look and the bank's making almost exactly $400,000 in interest on top of what you're buying.
That's right.
How do we make sure that somebody else isn't getting rich off of our backs? And that's what we're here for.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's just where the education and being the advocate for your client really is, and helping them get caught up to speed with that and understanding the dynamics. I've complained about that. My wife's a teacher, And I've complained about that. It's like that, nobody, not that anybody has checkbooks now, because it's like now if you ask for a check, people are like, what is that? But actually understanding how finances work, and not having any classes through any of that. I mean, K through 12, you never hear anything about finances. I remember, at one point having a class where they taught us how to write checks,
Yep.
and I'm like, they don't even do that. Of course, my checks are almost oblivious now, but anyway, yeah, but that's a huge problem, with basically just basic education as far as how to manage your money and your finances. And then we wonder why people have such hard times with it.
Yeah, exactly. For somebody who's trying to break into the Charlotte market right now, what's the most critical conversation to have before they write an offer?
So I think basically that is having a good, clear understanding with them on what their budget is, on what the overall cost of having a home actually is. It's not just, well, here's my house payment. It's like, well, here's my homeowner's insurance, here's my HOA fee, here's my property taxes, all the things that go into that payment, because they honestly don't know any of that, especially first time home buyers. So someone trying to break into the market is just really having a sit down conversation with them and explain everything from start to finish on the process. Once we get under contract, in North Carolina, what is due diligence? And, why do I have to pay that? And, in earnest money, well, how much is that? Is it a percentage of the offer, or what? Who determines that? I'm like, it's all negotiable. Everything's negotiable. So, but again, it's just really just having that conversation with your buyers, making sure they completely understand the entire process, the financing process, what it's going to cost you ultimately, especially if they've been paying rent, because all they know is I'll pay rent. That includes my water, my power, my cable, my trash, everything like that. So understanding that's all kind of now it's going to be separate. So
What's the most effective strategy for sellers right now to maximize their return without overpricing their home and sitting stagnant in the market?
So as I talk to my sellers, first of all, we walk through and everything. I tell them, number one, from the moment someone pulls up in the driveway, we want the outside of that house, landscaping and everything to look good for that first impression. Okay. You want to make sure when they walk in the door that you've already addressed things that you already see. Do you need paint? Fresh coat of paint does wonders for the house and everything. And I basically explain it to them like this. Let's look at your house. Let's see what needs to be addressed, because you don't want a buyer walking through that door and they're automatically creating a to-do list that they're going to have to do when they move in that house. So that's going to create a negative feeling for them for the property itself. So if we can eliminate that, then we have a higher chance of getting a buyer much faster.
Well, right now we're seeing a slowdown in the market. We've got what I call a faux balanced market because the interest rates have pushed some of the buyers out, and we're starting to see an increase in our inventory. We're starting to see this, typical what we normally have. You can actually go back and see a property a couple times before you put an offer in. You can bring mom and dad with you. We're actually starting to get to, and it's not a balanced market because we don't have 6 months worth of inventory. That's what they consider a balanced market. In Charlotte, we had they just put the numbers out. We have 3.2 months, but because the interest rate has pushed a lot of buyers out, we're starting to see that balanced market. So I tell sellers, I said, now is where the buyers have changed. They are literally, when we were doing 2008, it was the start of HGTV. We don't care what condition the box is in. We can put on a coat of paint. We can put flooring in. But now it's, I want to drop my stuff and go. Because time is the one thing I don't get back. And I don't want to be putting it into my house. I want my house to be my safe haven. It needs to be perfect, so I come home, and when I come home I just relax. I don't see all the things I have to do.
Right. That's true. And then as we're pricing out their property, they'll, oh, this house down the street, it sold for X amount of dollars a few months ago and everything. I'm like, okay, well, that's great. So let's look at our comps as far as what closed. That's a comp for your house. I was like, but more importantly, they have value, but more importantly, we need to see the homes like yours that are active on the market now, because that's your direct competition. So if you just base it off what a house sold back in, January, February, or whatever, and you're not paying attention to what's on market now, then you can easily overprice that house and just sit there because you gave no attention to your competition. They're priced better than you are, so they're going to get sold, and you're going to sit there.
And we tell people it's one of the best things. Take sellers out and let them see what the price they want actually can buy them. And then
Right.
that way they can look and go, because everybody says, oh, but my house is so much better than theirs. Well, if you have 13 that you're competing with, you got a 1 in 13 chance that somebody's going to pick you. And
Well, yeah.
at that price point, how many buyers are there? Because we can tell you that. We can tell you this is how many showings were this past week. This is how many buyers were out there.
Right. Yeah, and at the same time, you're going to have that 1 in 13 chance as you're trying to find that one person that thinks your house is valued the same as you think it is.
Yeah.
So,
What is
easier said than done.
what's that meme where it's like how I see my house and it's the Taj Mahal, how the appraiser sees my house and it's the shack, how the buyer sees it, it's like nothing but all the things that have to be done. That's the meme that we think about.
Yeah, and that's the things we have to bring to light to those sellers, because I mean, I'm sure you've met with several people. They're walking through, they're highlighting all of these great countertops or this great old jacuzzi tub they put back in the 90s or whatever, but it's so awesome, or the mirrored wall that's fantastic. It's just amazing entertainment. I'm like, none of this is relevant today. All this is outdated. Nobody's going to like this anymore. That's your challenging seller who just has value in that stuff, and that's going to be a challenge for selling that property.
Yeah. When walking through a property for your listing appointment, what's an immediate red flag that signals that this house is going to struggle to sell for you?
It's going to be basically the overall condition of the property. I mean, if they have honestly just not updated the house since they bought it, if they have not kept it up, they bought it back in 92, then you go in and it's 2026 and they still have the same countertops, they still have the same flooring, but they think it's great. It's having that conversation. And I tell them straight up, I was like, look, I'm not trying to be offensive of your home and everything. I know it's a beautiful home for you, it has served you for a very long time, but buyers are not going to be inclined to come in and want to make an offer on this property at the price that you're expecting to get. And it's, in all honesty, going in as an agent and as a professional in our industry, it's having the hard conversation that is, number one, honest with the client. And at the end of the day, too, realizing that you might not agree with the client, they might not agree with you, and you walk away from that client because you're going to have a very difficult process of getting the house either where it needs to be to sell or at a price point where it would actually sell.
Correct. Yeah, it's having the hard conversations up front at least help you to clear that hurdle when you're there. It's funny because you talked about, the old jacuzzi tub. I had a client that I went for a listing appointment, and it was 2015 or 2017, somewhere right around in there. And the owner walked through and we had a designer come in 1995 and give us, this was completely interior designed from ceiling to floor. And I'm like, it's been 20 years. Your house shows it. It's nowhere, but it's designer for 1995, hon.
Right,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
She was not having it with me in any way, shape, or form. And that's okay. But she had listed 6 times with 6 different agents, and I had the hard conversation with her. She finally did sell later on, but it was when she finally did sell, it was with an agent, and she actually did update the home some. Not a lot, but some. Right. After, I'm sure, several conversations.
Well, I mean, as well as I do, you don't do anybody any favors by trying to just tell a seller what they want to hear. You're just going to make your job difficult. You're going to give them unrealistic expectations that you can't deliver on. And it's just best to just be upfront with them and honest and give them your professional opinion on what needs to happen in order to get that house sold.
So we're looking at 2026, and then we've already talked about, it's already changed because of Iran and interest rates and that kind of thing. But looking at the 2026 Charlotte market, what major trends should buyers and sellers be preparing for?
I think really the major trend is just understanding the norm of where we're at, that even despite volatility in the world, that our economy is strong, that our rates are stable. So I mean, really, I think really the trend to look for is stability in the interest rate that's going to be there. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be there until mid 2027. I don't think we're going to get anywhere outside of that low sixes until around that time. So I think that's the trend, is just where we're at. This is where we're going to be. Go ahead, and pull the trigger if you find a house that really fits what your family needs, because that's the rates. That's where they're going to be. They're not going to move a whole lot.
What's the best piece of advice for a listener looking to maximize their real estate investments over the next few years?
So my best advice I can give is, if you're ready, willing, and able to buy now. Because in all honesty, and this, you've been here long enough to understand Charlotte, number one, we have consistent appreciation. We have strong job markets here, illustrated by 157 people a day moving here. We've got some really good school districts with top 10. You're in one of them. You get in Union County, there's several of them there as well. So we've got that. Then you have your charter schools and private schools as well. But, just with the Charlotte area has done such a great job with attracting businesses and corporations here, that there's a strong job market, and that's going to continue to propel us with consistent appreciation. So the longer you wait, it's like they say, the real estate market is like trying to time the stock market. You can't do it. You can't. You can think you do it, but by the time you think it's time to do it, you've already missed when you should have pulled the trigger. So if you're ready, willing, and able to do it now, buy now and let that appreciation happen.
God's not making any more dirt. And
Nope.
I tell people every single day, it's like the day you should have bought was yesterday.
That's right.
Because you're not going to outpace how expensive the houses are getting. And as much as we talk about affordability, the home is still going to appreciate, even
That's right.
at the minimum of 3 to 7% per year. You're
That's
never
right.
going to outpace how expensive your house is going to appreciate for.
I 100% agree. That's exactly right.
Scott, you have been an absolute doll. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate your time. As we said, that's the only resource you don't get back. So when somebody invests their time with me, I'm so appreciative. We have all your socials. We will have you blasted out everywhere. Thank you so much. And I greatly appreciate you being here.
Indeed, it's been my pleasure being here, meeting with you, having a conversation, and again, just completely grateful and honored to be here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on Make Yourself at Home. I hope you found insights and inspiration to help you navigate your real estate journey with confidence. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share this show with your friends, because everyone deserves to feel at home. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and keep making moves that matter.